Hey ladies, and welcome to Mindful Mums. I hope you're all well and you've had a lovely morning. So I'm here today with the lovely 𝗲𝗄𝗧, as I am every week. How you doing, Will?
Not too bad. We're all still here, Emma, so that's good.
Yeah, that's all good. All still here, all still fighting fit. So welcome to Mindful Mums. We're here to help you suppress your doubts, your worry, and your negative mindset so that you can better manage your thoughts and your emotions, so that you can build your confidence, which a lot of us lack. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, confidence and self-compassion. You can build your confidence, build your self-esteem, and live a life without feeling completely overwhelmed, anxious, and just not in the right place, feeling unhappy, unworthy. So we're all about growth, growing yourself so that you become the best of yourself and achieve all the things that your heart desires. We're always giving attention, I feel, as a mum, we're always giving attention to others, always putting everyone else first rather than ourselves. And we spend so little time on our own well-being. So our mental and our emotional well-being, for me, is what's really significantly changed my life for the better. And that's what Mindful Mums is all about. It's here to support you with your emotional and your mental well-being. And I honestly believe if we can master our mindsets, we can go on to master our life. So today we're going to jump in. Will, have you got anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important subject, really, Emma, as we've talked about many times before. It was one of the biggest subjects in the book because, it all kind of builds from confidence and almost like its sister, which is self-love and self-compassion. So what we notice is that when you love yourself and care about, self-care, you care about yourself more, your confidence rises. Turn that the other way around, when your confidence rises, your self-compassion rises. Now, I've always talked about, I think it was an Australian psychologist many years ago, was talking about how confidence has kissing cousins. So what you tend to find is that when you start getting more self-confident, like magic, your self-worth, your self-respect, your self kind of belief all rise with it. So anyone that kind of works on as personal, part of their personal development program that works on confidence, realize that you are doing so much more than just looking at your confidence, because like those kissing cousins, knock that first domino over and dominate confidence, you will feel more compelled to work on yourself, to do things for yourself, which then kind of has a feedback loop for your confidence. So anyone that sort of, a bit like the mind gym, we don't go to the gym and try and build our muscles and go one session and come back with an 8-pack, and it just don't happen. You have to keep going to the gym every few days. So it's the same for your mind. Your mind has to go to the mind gym every day. And if there's one thing we need to work on, it needs to be confident.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And it makes I think as well, just before we jump in, it for me, it's made the biggest difference doing the things that have really, and we're going to talk about this, how do we do the things that scare us, because we tend to run away from them.
Yeah.
But actually doing the things that feel really uncomfortable, because when you start doing them and then you sort of look at yourself, you reflect and you go, oh my God, I did that. I can do that. I overcome that, which inspires you and encourages you to go on and do the next thing, right?
Yeah. And one more thing just before we jump in is, I've had 5 daughters, so I can talk about this. I grew up with women, so I can talk about this. I coach mainly women and a lot of menopausal women, different thing. But, women, whether it's menopause or menstrual cycles, what your body is going through different changes and different stages at every time of the month. What we've got to realize is that our confidence levels and our emotions are the same. So what we've got to appreciate is that just because we feel flat and we don't feel much self-esteem, we don't feel very worthy, we don't feel very self-respectful, sometimes we've got to appreciate that, like the weather, some days it's blue sky, some days it's clouds. And if we kind of understand that confidence is a bit like those clouds, some days it will be dark and we feel like we've got no confidence. Other days will be blue sky and we feel like we can reach for the sky. So confidence is a moving target, a bit like our cycles in our body, especially for a woman. And if we could just understand that and make sure that we put our oxygen, I always talk to people about putting our oxygen mask on first. Women, particularly with self-care, self-love, self-compassion, they have to imagine that you had your three lovely daughters on a plane, Emma, and the plane has just said it's going down. The first thing you would instinctually do as a mother would be to try and put all three oxygen masks on your daughters. Now, the problem is, if you don't look after yourself, you're soon going to run out of oxygen, in which case you can't save any of them. So although it feels a bit strange for a mother's instinct, which is to look after their pride as a lioness, first of all, you've got to look at the oxygen mask on first, because good selfish, as a good friend of mine, Katie, said, good selfish is putting your own oxygen mask on first, and then you can help lots and lots of other people. What you notice, particularly with a lot of my women clients, is if they don't put their own oxygen mask on first, they quickly run out of energy and then they can't help anyone.
They get sick. Yeah. Okie doke. Okay, so the first question that I've got for you, Will, is, and this is literally, I've pulled this from a comment that someone came to me with, and they literally worded it like this: I feel like I'm losing my mind. They said, everything panics me. They want to feel proud of themselves. And they said, how can I build my self-confidence and feel better about myself, and also raise my self-esteem? Because it's this feeling of unworthiness. They just don't feel worthy. They don't feel like they're good enough. They're looking to build their confidence so they can actually move forwards and go after the things that they want.
I think the best place to start is to realize that at the moment, I don't know this person obviously, but we've got to appreciate that anything that's happened in the past is just a program. Anything in the future is potential, is possibilities, as we always hear Dr. Joe Dispenza talk about. You know, the world is full of potential. So what we've got to do, is appreciate that everything we feel, everything we do as a pattern is just a program. So if we've always gone through up to the age of 20, 30, 40, 50, a stage of feeling that we're not enough, that we're losing our mind, that we're in panic mode, that we're not good enough, that you know, our self-esteem is on the floor. If we've always constantly felt that, thought that, experienced that, talked about that, guess what? We are destined to repeat the past until we change the program.
Yes.
And so what we're talking about, and this is what we're part of, this is what lots of other people and influence out there are part of, we've got to change our beliefs, because beliefs aren't truth. They are just programs. And if you've always believed that you're not enough, that you're not worthy, that you're not very confident, you know, if you tell your body enough times, it will believe you. You know, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not confident. How many times do we hear ourselves either telling other people that, or we tell ourselves that? And as I always kind of remind people, the body's always listening. The body eavesdrops on everything your head tells it. Talked about this before. So we've got to appreciate that if you tell your body enough times, which is where your emotions hang out, if you tell your body enough times that you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not confident, guess what? Your feelings believe you.
Yeah.
So should we start with the comfort zone and get the comfort zone up? Because this is what we're really kind of talking about with getting out of our comfort zone. This is the best way that you're going to start to build your self-confidence. So, I mean, what does that speak to? Do you want to start, Emma? What does that say to you from how you would deal with your comfort? Because we've all got our comfort zone experiences.
Yeah. So what? Repeat that to me. What do you mean? How
Right.
does it
So
speak to me?
how we all know that to stretch, like muscle, we have to go to the gym to put muscle under pressure to make it grow and strengthen. And our mind muscle is the same. And it's called the comfort zone experience, you know, the exercise. So what have you done before I kind of explain it chapter and verse, what have you done in the past to kind of stretch yourself and go past your comfort zone barrier and to kind of smash your glass ceiling to go beyond what you thought you were capable of?
Sure. So I think for me, the first step would be clarity, gaining clarity on where it is I want to go.
Yeah.
So even if the belief wasn't there, we all have things that we'd like to achieve, right? So there's things we want to achieve, places we want to go, whether that's in our personal life or in our work life. So I'm going to take this back to a few years back when I was living in Essex, and I just got to a point. It it just didn't feel comfortable anymore, but I just didn't feel happy. I felt like I was just on a bit of a um, sort of hamster wheel doing the same thing over and over again. And I wanted things to change, but I really was like, how do I change? My thoughts were very much like, this is where you live, the kids go to the school, they're very happy at the school, you've got all of your family and friends here. I kept on limiting what I thought was possible based on what was going on in and around me in my environment. So I think my first step was like, okay, I sat down, I was like, what do I really want? If I could achieve anything, or if I could have anything, or if I could be living anywhere, what does that look like? So it started off with gaining clarity on what it was, or where it was I wanted to be, where it was I wanted to go.
Brilliant. So the clarity bit is you've got a new vision, like we talked about just now. You've got a new vision of a potential to break away from the old so comfortable, isn't it? So if you
Mhm.
look at that smallest grey area, what lives in that grey area, the small one where it says comfort zone, feel safe in control, that is okay to live in some moments. But what you will find is that fatigue, boredom, same old kind of lives there. Now, we all know people, but it tends to be older relatives of ours. I remember my grandmother and certain uncles, a lot of older people, and increasingly a lot of younger people since the pandemic want to live in their comfort zone.
Mm.
Now, what does a comfort zone look like? It looks like a couple that I knew, neighbours of mine years and years ago, who would go to Morrison's shopping at 4:30 every Friday religiously. And they would do a shopping for an hour. And they would go to the fish and chip shop at 5:30. And there wouldn't be much of a queue because it's early. And they would come back. Now, what they did that for decades. They did that for decades. Now, I won't tell you all the other things that they lived because it would bore us stupid, but they basically lived their life where unless they were comfortable and known and certain and familiar, they wouldn't step out of it. Now, the problem is if you don't step out of your comfort zone, start, like you can see the second grey, darker grey, which is the fear zone. If you can't step out that first stage, you're going to live a limited life. You're not going to have more novel experiences. Life will be okay, but you will never stretch yourself and become more. And if you are living a life that is not very pleasant and you're not enjoying it, you're going to be stuck there forever. So that smaller grey, the lighter grey, is literally like a prison. It's like a mind prison.
Mm.
And what we've got to do is, we've heard the statement before, haven't we? Many people have talked about this. Do one thing every day that gets you out of your comfort zone. Do one thing every day that scares you, that reaches beyond. Now, what we mustn't do is go to extremes and scare ourselves too much. So I'm talking about going from a 1 fear level to a 10 fear level overnight because you're trying to hack and you're trying to beat the system. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example of that. I knew a girl who was paranoid of heights, started reading a lot of self-help books, went to Dunkerswell airfield in Devon, done a parachute jump, was paranoid of fear, fearful of heights. The problem was she took such the extreme level that it almost fried her circuits, and for years afterwards she couldn't do hardly anything again that pushed herself outside the comfort zone. What she tried to do is to just go way too far, way too quick, and it kind of
Yeah.
fried her nervous system. that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, you know, if you take your journal, you know, we've talked about journal practice in the past. If you take your journal and talk about new experiences of getting outside your comfort zone and literally grade them. So 10 would be horrific, like jumping out of a plane, you know, at 30,000 feet or whatever it would be. And then grade them from 1 to 10. Now, if you're starting at 0, which is where your comfort zone is at the moment, literally go, right, what are the tasks and challenges to go beyond my comfort zone for 1s? And what are 3s? And what are 5s? And what are 8s? And literally decide that you are going to systematically start working through layers of an onion. So this is what this layer is really. There's 4 layers of the onion here, the comfort zone. And what you start to find is that when you start training your mind, which is your thoughts in the head, feelings in the body, when you start training your mind to gradually get a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit unfamiliar, a little bit uncertain, you will be fine, because you've got that mild kind of anxiety. It's very light. It's not too much. It's not, oh my God, paranoia, you're in a state of paralysis analysis where you can't move. We're talking about little things that make you uncomfortable. Because, you know, as I keep coaching people over the years, there is no such thing as standing still. This is where people kind of get it wrong. They believe that if they don't step out their comfort zone, they'll be happy for the rest of their life. They've got everything they need. They don't want to stretch themselves anymore. They don't want to learn anymore. They don't want to experience anymore. They don't want to become anymore. Now, they think, great, I'll stand at a static position. But no, what actually happens is that your comfort zone, like a band around your neck, starts getting tighter and tighter and tighter, because there is no standing still. So you've got to tell yourself with your comfort zone, either we are growing and stretching and becoming more, which is going outwards of the comfort zone, or we're being taken hostage in a prison where it says that comfort zone, the small one, we're being taken prisoner, and all of our fears are starting to strangle us. Because what you find is that even the stuff you're used to starts to become scary. So your life gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And we've often seen this, Emma, with like older relatives, haven't we?
Yeah, and you know what? You say that, and it's like it's the ones like your old neighbours that you were talking about, that at some point, and I've spoken to my parents about this. I've spoken to other sort of people, elderly people, age 80 plus, who have regrets. They say like one of the biggest regrets that older people have, if they're, you know, on their deathbed, is looking back and wishing they'd lived a life that was authentic to them and done the things that they really wanted to do, but they never did, because this comfort zone area, like you say, it makes you feel safe. You
Yeah.
feel like there's certainty there, you know what's to come, and uncertainty can make us feel really uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
comfortable feeling, but it's in the uncertainty where we actually tend to grow. When we're doing the things that don't feel comfortable, that's when we tend to grow. That's definitely been the case for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So swap growing muscle, strengthening muscle, for growing mindset and growing your life.
Mm.
So, you know, we could be talking about FOPO, couldn't we? Fear of other people's opinions. Several years ago, we'd never heard of the expression, but when Michael Gervais, the top psychologist in America, came out with FOMO and FOPO, everyone started to understand it, because they said, that's what I have a problem with. You know, I do
Yes.
fear, especially on social media. And look, we're all frightened of being thrown out of the tribe. So we've all got an element. There's not a coaching client that I don't coach, even high performers, who haven't at least got some element of FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. You know, I'm going to post that post. What will some people think? Oh my God, you know, they're going to think less of me. I'm not such a people pleaser. I'm thrown out of the proverbial tribe, you know. So even FOPO, you could put on this comfort zone chart. You know, when are you occasionally saying things, doing things, posting things that might make you a little bit anxious when you put it out there? You know, you say something to your neighbor, you say something to your mother-in-law because you need to stand up for your truth and be honest, or you need to stand up for some, you know, cause. You need to put, you know, where some people are going to disagree with you, which is part of life, part of living. The problem is you're either stretching or you're restricting. What are you going to live your life? And it was brilliant the way you said about the people on their deathbed. A friend of mine, Adrian, hospice worker for 20 years in Plymouth, the number one regret of the dying, which constantly comes up in the last hours and days of their life, I wish I would have lived a life true to myself and not what other people thought of me. And so confidence building, people think, what's the relationship between comfort zone and confidence building? You are naturally building your self-ability, your self-respect, your self-worth, your self-belief, your self-confidence by doing the comfort zone exercise every day.
And I think as well, like when I'm looking back, it all starts with the thoughts again, doesn't it? It all comes back to the thinking. So say if you've got something that you want to achieve and you're there going, oh, I haven't got the confidence to do it, say if you're in a job that you really don't want to be in and you want to change your job and apply for a different job, and you're thinking, oh, I haven't got the confidence to go for it, I've been in this job for so long, I don't know if I can do this, this other thing. I think you don't even need to start, like you say, start applying. You can even just start by going, right, okay, let me try and reframe the way I'm, my thinking. Rather than using I can't, like we've said before, maybe not even I can, but I can try, or I'm becoming more, or whatever it may be. So it can start really, really small. Because I think that's the key thing when you mentioned about your friend who went up into the plane to try and conquer her fears of heights. If we take a too big a step, it can scare the crap out of us.
Yeah.
And actually cause more harm than good. So it's like really pulling it back. And even if it starts by trying to reframe the way that you're talking to yourself, your self-talk, and you start there. So over time, you start to feel more able. Oh, I am more able. I think I can do this, rather than I don't think I can do this. I think I might be able to do this, and just slowly build it from there. Because that's why I'm so passionate about the mindset, and our thoughts and our emotions and working on them. Because the more we do that, the better we become, the more able we feel we are. So we achieve more because we go after more.
Yeah. And so the comfort zone is one of the exercises that we should be mindful of doing every day. What one thing, two things would scare me, but they're only just taking me outside of my present comfort zone. Great, you're stretching yourself. Another thing is to kind of have a different relationship with fear. If there's one thing I recognized when I was writing my life book, is that if fear had a voice, and this was the final line of the whole chapter that I finished with, if fear had a voice, it would say, you've got me all wrong. What do I mean by that? It means that fear, we think, is there to stop us from growing, but it's actually there to help us push through and develop our confidence muscles. Because if we didn't have fear, we'd actually be quite a danger to ourselves, wouldn't we, and other people. So we need some fear of burning ourselves, fear of our children crossing the road, fear of kind of, putting ourselves in dangerous situations late at night. We need some fear which looks after us, but we mustn't let fear kind of take us over, because there is a good, like everything in life, there's a positive and a negative, a dark and a light. And the good side of fear is there to help us become more. So we break through our fears, we listen to our fears, but we don't let them dominate us.
Yeah, I love that. Okie doke. So we've touched on confidence. I want to move on to the second question, which is, and again, I've pulled this from someone that emailed me. I seem to give up really easily. So this is what they're saying. I seem to give up really easily. They believe it's a confidence thing. I don't believe in myself and my abilities. They just have no faith. They've got no belief in what they're capable of achieving. What can I do to change it?
So again, it's got to come back to the program. It's got to come back to program, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. So it's a program of beliefs, but it's also, she may well have lots of You know, I'm not denying her reality, because she's probably got 50, 100, 5,000 stories to confirm and back up what she's just said. So it is reality. We've got to deal with it. But what we've got to deal with, the difference between looking backwards and where we stood at the moment and looking forwards. Has she got to a point? This is what I always ask myself, and I get my clients to say, have we got to a point sometimes where we're sick and tired of being sick and tired? Do we get to a point where we're not going to tolerate that behavior in ourselves anymore? We might be, I mean, I don't know how old this mum is, but you know, she could be 26, could be 36. She may have had a whole lifetime of a belief system of everything she just said. And I've got no doubt she'll have loads of evidence to back it up. But has she now reached a point in our life, and this is the same with all relationships, whether it's relationship to our partner, relationship to our job, a relationship to where we live, relationship to our thoughts and feelings and beliefs, they're all relationships. So we get to a point with every relationship where it's run its course. It's gone past its sell-by date. And if we get to a point where we start getting very edgy and niggly and angry and kind of bitter, and just kind of, we can't tolerate it anymore. That's the word that I want to look at, tolerate. When we get to, you know, being tolerate is like an elastic band. And once you snap our tolerance level, great, because it means that you're no longer going to live in your old program, your old story. And the minute that happens, and some people have got great pain thresholds, Emma, as we know, you know, they will tolerate a lot of pain and suffering in their life. And we're all guilty of that, by the way. We've got to get to a point when we start listening to the body and listening, where are we no longer prepared to tolerate an old behavior or habit or way of being, because it's just not serving us anymore. So I think, you know, if we let's take a look. Have you got the let's look at the circle of influence, because I think that will kind of, you know, so much of our confidence is tied up to us trying to control the whole world, isn't it? We want to control the whole world. So what we're looking at is that I want people to kind of do an exercise on their journal where you literally write 2 circles, and the middle circle is literally what you can control and influence. So we would be looking at your like we've got in here, your perspective. You know, what news and media do you let into your world? You know, how you present yourself to the world. You know, what you say, what you do, what you think, what you feel. You know, whether you're compassionate or not, whether you're empathic to others, whether you're loving to others. You know, what you read, what you let in from the media, you know, negative media. So literally go away in your journal and do a little journal exercise and decide what you can control and influence. And that is the middle circle. And what you need to be doing is paying more attention to this, because what the outer circle, as you can see with a different color, does, the outer circle is all the things that we still kind of worry about, fret about, get anxious about, but we've actually got no control and influence over. So you know, off the top of my head, well, as well as the ones that are on there, you know, what the media do, we've got no control and influence over that, and yet we still absorb all the negativity. What other people think of us, got no control and influence over that, only how we respond. What other people think of us, FOPO, you know, we've got no control over it. You know, so what we've got to do is look at, you know, all social media, what people, you know, if people are cutting and kind of critical, you know, towards certain people, we get angry about it. There are a lot of things to get angry about nowadays in the world, but what we've got to differentiate between, in the circle of influence, things that we can control and influence on the middle circle, and things that we can't control and influence. And the exercise, the mindset exercise over time, is to drop a load of as many as possible and train ourselves to not worry about all the stuff on the external part of the circle, which we can't control and influence. And, you know, think of it like a ball. I think, you know, I saw a meme up the other day, and it was about, we don't have to catch every ball. We don't have to catch every ball. There's a lot of anger out there. There's a lot of venom. There's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of BS. There's a lot of this and that. If we worried about everything and caught every ball, we'd be a wrecking ball. We'd be an anxiety, you know, an anxious kind of ball of fire. So we've got to decide on what we're gonna hold and catch, and what we've got to let go, fly past our shoulder.
And touching on that, when you talk about the negativity maybe from the media, and it hasn't even got to be from the media. I've had an episode with my eldest daughter, Kitty, just over the last few days, because we've got the world in the palm of our hands, as in on our phones. So we're being, you know, I say marketed to, but we've got it grabbing our attention all day, every day.
Or propaganda.
Yeah, and a situation Kitty had, that even if there's something that's maybe gone on at school, it doesn't just end at school, because then there's, you know, chat groups and stuff on the phone. So it's a constant thing. And you touched on the media and about the negativity that we may absorb from the media. But the more we're listening to the news, or we're watching the news, or whatever it may be, that's creating our program, right? Because that's what we do. We're creating that internal program. So I think, and I said this to Kits yesterday, it's really important that we really are aware of where we're putting our attention, like we're aware of our environment. And if we're within an environment, which is what happened with me a few years back when I left Essex to come here, if we're in an environment where we feel static, that we're not, you know, sort of stationary, we're not growing, and we're not getting to where it is that we want to go, we need to take ourselves out of that environment. Obviously, one small step at a time, but we need to remove ourselves from that place.
Yeah. We don't need to, we can observe it. One of my mantras is always, we can observe, we don't need to absorb. Big difference. Like Big difference, you know, and it's the same with our emotions, or other people's emotions, particularly. You know, so many mums that we know, Emma, around us in our lives, have compassion fatigue, don't they? They have compassion fatigue. They worry and fret and are concerned about way too many people, and they carry their emotional shopping bags for them. So they become the kind of the place where everyone else comes and dumps all their woes of the world on their doorstep, because they're very compassionate. Well, you end up getting compassion fatigue, where the point that you're so full, you can't take it anymore. So, you know, one of the great exercises that I get clients to do sometimes is what I call the love is exercise. So you would take your journal and you would literally write down on one side of the journal, love is. I mean, it's a bit like a sort of cheesy kind of advert from the 1970s, isn't it, on a t-shirt? But it really works, because it's all about energy. So you write down on the left-hand side, love is, and on the other side, you write fear is. Now, the object of the exercise is to try and talk to things that resonate, and words that resonate with you. And then there's always a polar opposite. So I'll give you an example which came to mind for me this morning. Everyone will be different, by the way, because they've all got their own interpretation of love. So for me, on the left-hand side, it will be love frees, fear imprisons.
Right.
So love accepts on the left, fear rejects. So I always find that with clients and myself, because, you know, I'm hopefully quite in tune with my feelings in my body, love energizes and uplifts, fear saps your energy. Fear saps your energy. You just feel really low, and, you know, fear is strong, fear is weak. Love is honest, fear is deceitful. And I just wrote a few more down. Love is brave, fear is fearful. Love is kind, fear is angry. And the one that always speaks to me is that love gives way, you know, let's go, gives way. fear resists. You know, and sort of, you know, I don't know, what would be yours straight off the top of off your head with what
Oh
love is and
God.
what fear is?
Straight away would be love is acceptance,
Yeah, good.
and fear is rejection.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
be straight away. I love what you spoke about as well last week, Will, and this all comes down to this when you talk about inner coach and inner critic. Because this just talking, talking about this technique, um, it reminds me that this is my inner coach. This is me speaking to my inner coach and working, growing, rather than listening to my inner critic and just settling.
yeah, yeah, brilliant. Lovely. It's an easy way, isn't it? If we keep it simple, personal development, growth, change,
Yeah.
self-help, if we keep it simple, it's easy to apply.
Yes.
It's when it all gets a bit too psychology and a bit heavy. But, you know, that was the best inner critic, inner coach was the best way that I used in the book to kind of describe that. Do you remember when we were playing kids, or we watch our own kids playing musical chairs, and there's two kiddies left in the last part of the game, there's one chair. You've only got one chair for either an inner critic or an inner coach to sit at. Which one are you going to put in the chair in the spotlight? Are you going to let your inner coach beat yourself up from the inside and berate everything you do, everything you say, and tell you you're not good enough and not thin enough, not pretty enough, not a good enough partner, not a good enough mother? That's your inner critic. Or are you going to let the inner coach champion you that I'm doing the best that I can with what I've got? You know, I am good enough. I have my bad days. I'm fabulously flawed, you know, perfectly imperfect. You know, are you going to let your softer, gentle, loving, and this is why this exercise is really good, because once you start to notice where, you know, the horrible fits, the dark side of fear shows up and where love is present, once you start to notice it, you can start to change it.
Yeah, I love that. It all comes down to awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Self-discipline and awareness.
Yeah, I love that. Okie doke. Another question that I had was around courage. Okay, so how can I build the courage and stop faking it, be true to who I am, and sort of stand tall in my authenticity? So that's one thing I hear from a lot of mums. Um, we could blame so many different things for it, whether that's social media, looking on the outside, like we've mentioned before, thinking that everybody else has got it sussed, but they haven't. And they're trying to be this person to get this acceptance from other people, maybe even acceptance for themselves. Um, but it's not who they really are. And
Yeah.
how do they build the courage to really sort of stand tall in their own authenticity?
So when people talk about being authentic, it's an easy throwaway statement, but what does it really mean? And for me, being authentic is showing up warts and all.
Mm,
Being authentic is being perfectly imperfect and happy with that.
mm,
Being imperfect and authentic means you accept yourself for who you are, and that you know that someday, especially with your moods, you will be better than others. I mean, I've talked about this many times with a lot of my women clients. I kind of, with the ones that I know really well and get on well with, and you know, we've got a very good personable relationship. I'll joke with them which version is showing up today, because I know with women there literally is 3 or 4 versions of that same woman. And I could literally, if I've coached someone, like some of my clients I've coached for 3, 4, 5 years, some of them on the TV, some of that, you know, that most people here today would know, you know, every day they're watching television. But I know that I could divide each of their coaching sessions, some of them 30, 40, 50 sessions. I could divide them into 3 or 4 categories of a different version of that woman that showed up. So, you know, this is why I coach 80, 90% of women, is because that, you know, I'm one of the coaches that gets it because of having 5 daughters and growing up with, you know, women, and actually being really interested in the emotional side of it, because it's all about emotion. And, you know, one of your heroes, I know one of mine is, you know, one of my longest term clients, you know, that put a quote on the front of my book, Vicky Patterson, you know, the change in her since I started coaching her 4 years ago, she'd come out of a relationship, and I'm not telling you anything that she hasn't talked to the media about here, by the way. So, you know, she was on a wedding program with another friend of mine, who's a big events organizer, and they were in Dubai, and Vicky was filming an 8-part series on charting the whole process in a very kind of fly on the wall kind of documentary. And it got to right the end, 7 or 8, you know, part 7 or 8, right near the end. And partner to be, she was getting married to a few months after that, after being in Dubai, was found to be cheating on camera. And so literally our whole world is kind of detonated, not just as if it would be bad enough anyway, but a whole world detonated because it's all on camera and, you know, it's being filmed. So, you know, just shortly after that, she came onto the coaching program because she was trying to explore different ways of dealing with all the trauma of everything and rebuild her life again. And this, coming back to the point I wanted to make, is that the one thing we love Vicky for, which you know she's been fantastic at doing, is making sure that she keeps Instagram real, and that she makes sure, if you want to build your courage and want to strengthen your confidence, what me and Vicky always talked about was opening the pressure valve. And what I mean by that is that trying to be perfect, trying to be brilliant, trying to be polished, trying to be a perfect mother, trying to be all things to all people is an impossible task. Sooner or later, if you try and keep that veneer, that Disney polish up, you are going to break on the inside. Too many expectations of self, too many expectations of others, too much in the social norm about, you know, being that perfect mother, wife, partner, whoever, and, you know, perfect daughter, perfect this, perfect friend. And what she does, if you notice with her posts, and this is deliberate, by the way, every several posts, she will call out the BS on Instagram, and she will call out her own flaws and her own vulnerabilities, and she will be transparent, and she will be authentic, and she will keep it grounded and real. And the reason she does this every now and again, it's not by chance, it's like planned. She will do it because it opens the pressure valve of reminding herself that she doesn't have to show up and be that perfect Instagram influencer with 5.4 however many million followers, that's on TV or on brands most weeks, you know, in most papers most weeks. Taking the mick out of herself, laughing at herself, putting her belly, you know, putting her belly and her double chin on Instagram is her way of keeping it grounded and human. Oscar Wilde said it, Emma, and I always remember this from many, many years ago: be yourself, everyone else is taken. And if you are yourself and you laugh at yourself and you don't take yourself too seriously and you don't try and be too perfect, just watch, as I've seen with her in her life, just watch your courage and your confidence and your ability to be more true to yourself and authentic. Watch it start to skyrocket. I don't know. What's your feelings on that?
Yeah, I love that. And I think, like, I follow Vicky, I follow a few celebrities on Instagram, and it's so relatable. You can sort of understand why they have a big audience because they're very, very relatable. And I think it's just nice to know that we all go through these shitty times or these tough times, or like you say, times where we're not really feeling it. And it's
Mm.
nice to hear that, you know, sometimes I think celebrities are painted in this wonderful light that they've got all of this success and this wealth and this happiness and everything else. But I think it's good for us all to understand that, you know, that isn't always the case. In fact, a lot of the time it isn't the case. The success, the money, however you see success, isn't what makes you happy. It's actually being authentic, feeling like you're growing, and you're moving towards something that you know that you want, whatever that is. I think that's where the happiness comes from. It comes from the growth and not feeling like you're static and you're standing still and you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, something I know I did a while back, because I said to myself, like, I want to be more authentic. I want to sort of stand in my, I just want to be myself, and not feel like I remember mentioning to you, if I did something and then regretting it afterwards, thinking, oh, I shouldn't do that. Should I delete it, or should I do this, or should I do that? I wanted to be more authentic, and I just made a list in my journal of all the things that I like to do or that feel authentic to me, that are me. And I made a list of them, and I just tried to do them a little bit more, do those things a little bit more, be a bit spontaneous, and share what was on my mind rather than thinking, oh, I've got to, write it down, make it all precise. Just talk and chat, and talk about maybe what I'm going through, or what's happening, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Be open, be
Yeah.
expressive, because all emotion wants to do, I want people to kind of recognize, I love talking about emotions because it's the fundamental core of everything we do. And
Mm,
we've not taught, Britain is notoriously bad, especially for men, more, equally to a degree for women as well. Britain for the last few hundred years has been awful about numbing, dumbing down, numbing emotions. We're known throughout the world, aren't we, for stiff upper lip, just get on with it, don't feel the feeling. What I've realized over the years, I do a little exercise, and this is another little lovely exercise to do in our journal. I call it the 3 M's. So memes, mottos, mantras, and basically what we're talking about is life rules to live by, or affirmations. Now, what we have to be careful of, in the industry of self-help, when people say, "Oh, reel off your affirmations. I am abundant. I am wealthy. I have lots of stuff around me." What we've got to be careful of, like we talk about the body knows, keeps a score, but the body eavesdrops on the head. Now, if you keep trying to tell your body, your emotions, that you have loads of cars and a big house and the rest of it, basically fake it till you make it, there's a part of your subconscious that's going to reject it.
mm,
This is where I don't buy into some of that element. It's great to have the element of law of attraction. It's great to be manifesting, but you've got to manifest with truth. So a simple little tweak that I say to people about affirmations is, rather than saying, I am full of abundance and the rest of it, when you're not, you're feeling like a bag of shit, and and your relationship's falling apart. Don't try and kid your body. Literally insert one word and it literally changes everything, and that's
mm,
becoming.
mm,
Becoming. I am becoming more loving. I am becoming abundant. Because becoming's a great, to be. We always talk now about stop doing so much and be. Well, becoming is literally, your dreams are on the other side of the bridge, and you are becoming something. So if you want to put mantras in, mottos to live by, memes, affirmations, life rules to kind of stand to as your standards, don't bullshit yourself or your body, your emotions. Just add the word becoming. It means you're working towards it. And, I've got a couple of mantras that me and Jane meditate first thing in the morning in bed. I have to remember these now. Mine is, I will read this over my mind time and time again. And one of them straight away shows up every day. I'm loved and respected, safe and protected. I am loved and respected, safe and protected. Now, I can recall that in my sleep because I've said it so much the last few years, and it's true. It's true. So you've got to say it if it's true. I'm loved and respected, safe and protected. Now, that's for me. I will say to any other mums, go and find what ones really speak to you. Like another one I use, and Jane does this one as well, is, I am loved, I am light, I am truth, I am free, I am me. I am loved, I am light, I am truth, I am free, I am me. And there's another one that just trips straight out my head, which I use every day, most days in my meditation. Every day and in every way, life has my back.
I
Every
love
day
that.
and in
Yeah,
every way, life has my back. Now,
yeah,
these, if you talk to yourself enough, they become subconsciously your home pages of beliefs to go back to. So when you're feeling kind of low, your confidence is not there, you don't love yourself, we're talking about, build your confidence and you will start to love and be compassionate towards yourself. These statements eventually become mantras. And when they're mantras and they're embedded deep in your consciousness, and the reason that I always say to people when you're doing this, and I do this when I'm meditating, is, if you want to do this with your eyes closed and kind of your hands on your heart, what you're doing is actually, by opening your heart, you're opening the program. Now, what do I mean by that? Your computer has got a lot of programs in it. Now, if you could get right into the hard drive of the program, you'd mess your computer up and it would go AWOL. So there's certain things that stop you from getting into the program so that you don't break the program on your laptop or your computer or your phone. The heart is a bit like that. So if you keep saying stuff to yourself, mantras, affirmations, and you're not really doing it with your heart open, it's a bit like trying to throw stuff at the glass and it will just fall. It doesn't go into the building. So opening your heart is a bit like opening the program. You literally open your heart and you let your subconscious kind of doors come open, and then you can put these statements, when you're saying them with absolute love, self-care, self-compassion and conviction, these will go straight onto the hard drive and they won't be resisted. And this is why I'd say you've got to make sure they're true for you, because otherwise they'll be rejected.
I use an app called 𝗵𝗵. I don't know if you've heard of it, but you're talking about mantras or mottos or mems. This is an affirmations app, so you can record in your own voice affirmations. It's just a great place to start if people are a bit uncertain, or you can record your mantras. And then I pop that on as I'm sitting in bed, or when I'm just doing my last few bits as I'm getting myself ready for bed. And it's just going through me with my mantras and the things that I say, and that mean something to me. And you know what? Sometimes I'll sit in bed, I fall asleep with it on. But louise hay says that, doesn't she? She says, don't worry about it if you fall asleep, because it's all going into that subconscious mind.
Yeah. If you've got a boring partner, like I've got a client who is going through divorce, and she says my boring partner just talks to me and that sends me to sleep. But no, we've all got different mantras, haven't we? That what you've got to do is use words that have got power for you. So I'm always talking words of spells. What you talk to about, how you talk to yourself. The words that you use have power. Always believe they are like spells. And that's why we've got to be very careful with what we and our children kind of absorb from the media and social media, because there's a word for it, it's propaganda. And what we've got to be careful of is that we don't embed ourselves with certain programs and beliefs that don't actually originate from us, they're someone else's. So we've got to be careful we don't swallow everything without chewing it over first.
Yeah, definitely. That's a bit of a battle, isn't it?
That's an understatement.
Yeah. But one that, I think if we're aware, then, if we're not aware and we just let it happen, then we have no control, that we're not able to manage it. Whereas at least if we're aware, we can start putting little actions in place to change things.
Yeah.
So I've got one last question, Will, but I think we've sort of touched on this already with what we've spoke about, and it was just around criticizing ourselves. We criticize ourselves a lot. We put ourselves down. They're aware they're doing it. I'm aware I'm doing it, but I can't seem to stop. But I know you've mentioned about the program, and it's sort of rewriting the program.
Let me mention another thing that will be helpful here. So I do an exercise which is called Power Hour. Now, most mothers will go, what the hell is on about? I've got no power hour for the first hour of the day. I'm lucky if I get 5 minutes. what I mean when I wrote in the book about Power Hour is that we've got to imagine that we start our day right at the beginning, start as you mean to go on. So your Power Hour could be 10 minutes. So what you would do for that first 10 minutes, because if you set the tone of the day, you have a much better chance of controlling the day, or as best as you can. Now, I call it building the castle. So imagine as a young mum, you know that it's not a case of whether you're going to get challenges and cannonballs come at you all day long. It's a case of how many are going to come at you. So you're going to have challenge after challenge after challenge as a young mum. We could spend the next hour just going for a shopping list of all those kind of things. So, and you've got the list up there as well. So, what we've got to do is the Power Hour is about setting the theme for the rest of the day, building your castle, strengthening your castle, so that you know when the cannonballs hit your castle, problems, stuff, issues, challenges, when the cannonballs hit your castle, at least it's got some chance of surviving the rest of the day. And then next, end of the night, you start building your castle back up again. Next morning, especially, you build your castle up again and off you go. Too many people, and we're all guilty of this if we don't allow the time, are not allowing themselves the reflection space, the pause, the moment, just to kind of take a moment, step back. Now, that might be the end of the night, at the end of the day, before you go to bed. It might be the first thing in the morning, which is really useful. And just sit, have a drink, look out in the garden, have a moment, work with your journal. Might be meditation, might be a little bit of exercise, like you say on there, bit of breathing. Get yourself set up for the day by building your castle and getting your mind in the right place. Because if you don't do that right from the off, what you're going to find is that you're never going to catch the day up. It's almost like, and we've all been there, you just feel that you've never quite got a grip on the day. And that's an awful day. And there is nothing better than setting yourself up and feeling you're at least equal with the day, or heaven forbid, you're kind of ahead of the day. And, if you can build your castle and strengthen yourself, you will be more robust to deal with whatever issues and challenges are thrown at you.
Yeah, I love that.
Self-care and self-love is really about being gentle to yourself, being loving to yourself, and not letting your inner critic beat you up from the inside. And awareness is noticing when the inner critic is coming in. Now, the worst time that the inner critic has the most power, and we will all know this, especially young mums that have got demanding children and going through a really challenging time, your inner critic is at its strongest and its most dangerous and potent when you are tired, exhausted, burnt out, and suffering from a lack of sleep. It's almost like you give a power pack to your inner critic. So every time you're tired and you're really struggling with sleep, which is a lot of people nowadays, you've got to appreciate that suddenly your inner critic's got more power. So you need to do the practices of setting your day up right, of doing your journaling, of doing your meditation, doing your movement, getting out for a walk, walking the dog, having a chat with a friend over coffee. You've got to do your personal development practices more than ever then, when your inner critic is kind of going wild and smashing your inner world up.
Yeah. And I just want to say as well, all these tools and techniques, I've tried many of them, and I use many of them regularly, but we just want to make these available to everybody, don't we? It's like, we're not here to tell you to do this or to do that, but we're here to offer you support and to just, a bit like a sweetie box, just pick the ones out that you think are going to work for you, and just give them a try. But I will say this one for me, having the time in the morning, just a bit of time to myself, so I feel like I can get my head in the right place, and I can get up, and the days it just tends to roll a lot better. Maybe because I've had a good start to my day, and like you say, my inner coach is like, yeah, you're doing well, you've got this. What else is it that we're looking, what else is it you want to achieve, or what direction is it you want to head in today, or what are your priorities for today, or whatever. When I miss this, and there are days I miss it because I check in with myself. If I've had a bit of a lack of sleep, then I'll be like, do you know what, this morning I need that extra half an hour in bed, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But when I tend to miss this, it all goes Pete Tong. It tends to all go slightly wrong.
Yeah. Starts the fire. It's a fire starter, isn't it? It starts the whole fire that ravages through that forest, that spreads to the next forest. And before you know it, you've had 3 days of really bad kind of, everything's falling off the coming off the tracks.
Definitely, because I think when you give that bit of time to yourself, you feel like you're serving yourself. If I get to the gym, I come back, I'm like, yeah, you've done that already today. You're doing amazing. So your self-talk becomes really positive, rather than, oh God, you got out the bed late, and this has happened, and it's just then it just spirals.
Yeah. The inner critics are a little demon that you've got to control it, or it will control you.
Control you. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Will. Another fantastic webinar. We're going to be back next week, which is the 4th webinar, which is the last one of this series. We're going to be talking about gaining clarity, and how we can get intentional and actually move towards the things that we want, and create some kind of a framework for ourselves to get us there. Anything else you want to add for next week?
No, all I would say with this confidence and building courage is that, keep working at it. Don't believe that it's going to come straight away. Accept that you're going to have good days and average days and bad days. But just like the gym, keep pushing that muscle, that mind muscle, and eventually you start to notice differences. The problem is we want to put a little bit of work on and see, that muscle appear straight away overnight, don't we? It doesn't happen. So you could do weeks and weeks of this and not see that much impact to start with. Just keep believing that those abs, in a different way, those abs will start to appear, and you will start to get more, resilient, stronger. You'll be able to bounce back more, and you'll be able to kind of deal with more challenges rather than, 3 or 4 things but happen and you're like a game of snakes and ladders. Suddenly you're hurtling down that big snake in the middle that takes you right back at the start. And I get a lot of people to look at their way of life as like a snakes and ladders game. When we're younger, Emma, we don't challenge the fact that we've had a few bad runs of throws of the dice and had several snakes. We just trust that life is going to give us, in the next couple of rolls, it's going to give us a few decent ladders. And that's what it's like. We must not get down just because we've had 5 snakes on the bounce.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you so much, Will. We'll catch up again next week, and thanks for everybody for watching. We'll speak to you soon.
Right. See you next week. Take care.
See you later.